What is up, you guys? We are back and we are going to be recapping UFC 313. Poatan just lost his belt. We're going to be working through the full prelims and then we'll go through the main card and get to the main event. So to kick off the night, we had Jordan Santos versus Ozzy Diaz. And Ozzy Diaz won this fight by unanimous decision. Personally, I had it going to Jordan Santos, just because of the volume that he put out in the first two rounds. I gave the third to Ozzy Diaz. But the first two rounds, I thought Jordan just put out more volume and controlled the ring more. I thought he was putting on pressure a lot of those first two rounds. He did start to gas a little bit towards the end of the third. But this was a great fight. This was an awesome fight to start off the night. It was a barn burner. Neither one of these guys really had enough power to finish each other off. Ozzy Diaz definitely had a little more power than Jordan Santos did. Um, but they were both just eating each other's shots and just throwing down. I think it was they said like the six most strikes ever thrown in a middleweight fight during the fight or something like that. Jordan Santos threw 350 strikes in a 3 round fight. So it was a really good fight to kick off the night. I can see how they gave it to Ozzy Diaz, though. It's not like it was a robbery, it was a super close fight. Personally, I just had it going to Jordan Santos, but I can see it going to Ozzy Diaz as well. So awesome fight to kick off the night. And we had two cancellations, so we only had one early prelims fight. So that was the only fight on the early prelims. And then after that, we had Marion Santos versus Francis Marshall. And pre-fight, I had picked Francis Marshall, and they did give him the decision. Um, but I don't agree with it, and I don't think anyone really agreed with it. I thought it was a pretty terrible decision. I've seen a couple of people that agreed with it, but I personally didn't agree with it. And if you haven't used Verdict, the app, I went on Verdict. I always just like to check how everyone else in the world scores it. I feel like they're usually pretty on Verdict. And everyone had it 3-0. Like on average, it was 3-0 for Francis Marshall, and it went the other way. So I don't know what the judges were watching there. I don't know exactly why they scored it that way. I had it for Francis Marshall. It did benefit my pick of Marion Santos, but I had it for Francis Marshall. So rough judging. There was a bit of rough judging throughout the night. This was the start of it. So, and I thought maybe you could argue the first fight, but it was a close enough fight. But this was a really rough call, in my opinion. So yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to say about that fight other than I do think that that one was a robbery. I don't think that was like a super close fight that was like could have gone either way. I think that was Francis Marshall's fight to win, and they gave him the loss. But on to the next fight, Carlos Leal. I did not think he was going to go out there and finish Alex Morono. I definitely thought he was going to win. I knew he was a big favorite. He came out and looked great his last fight, but Alex Morono's durable and he's a vet, and I didn't think Carlos Leal was going to be able to go out there and just finish him like he did, and he went out there and just walked through him. Honestly, like he couldn't have looked better. He just walked through him. And like I said, Alex Morono's super durable. And he went out there and got the finish and looked great in his second UFC performance. And then on a full camp, he looked really good. So I'm curious to see where they go with him after that, where he's going to match up, if he's going to get someone in the rankings or someone just outside of the rankings, how they're gonna play the cards with Carlos Leal. But that was a really good performance by him against a vet and Alex Morono. And then on to the next fight, Bruno Ferreira versus Arman Petrosian. Honestly, I did not see that fight finishing that way. Arman has really good takedown defense, and throughout the fight, he was looking really good. Honestly, I thought he won the first round. With the point deduction, it was 9-9 in my opinion. And then I thought he was winning the second round up until that point. Bruno was definitely landing some big shots, but they were few and far between. He was having quite a bit of trouble just closing the distance against Arman, and Arman was just kind of taking him apart at distance. He was looking really good. Um, and then Bruno just kind of ducked his head and blast doubled Arman into the cage, and he looked really good on the ground. He is a black belt in judo and a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Um, but yeah, he looked really good on the ground, especially against someone like Arman who's got good takedown defense, or at least he's proven so far in his UFC career that he does. Um, he looked really good. Got a nice finish. That was a nasty armbar. Had him in a triangle and pulled the armbar too. That was a super sick fight. Glad I picked Ferreira. That was not how I saw him winning. I saw him closing the distance and finding the chin, but he looked great and another great win. And I think that's 3 losses in a row for Arman, which is unfortunate because he's not a bad fighter, but Three losses in a row is definitely tough in the UFC. So we'll see if they keep him around or not. And then to end the prelims, we had Joshua Van versus Ray Tasuria, and this was a fun fight. It went exactly how I thought it was going to, honestly. Um, Ray came out there, he looked pretty good. He did have a couple of really good takedowns, but Joshua Van was just able to get back to his feet, and he had such a huge advantage on the feet. He looked so much better than Ray on the feet, and Ray obviously had a huge advantage in the grappling, but really he wasn't getting him with anything. Like he couldn't get a basic takedown on him. Like he wasn't getting any like single legs, double legs. He wasn't getting any takedowns off the cage. Joshua Van was doing a really good job defending against all those, but Ray did hit him with two arm tosses. Those were super nice takedowns, but Ray couldn't keep him down. I mean, he'd get a takedown and Van would find his way back up. Let's see how much control time he had in the fight. So he had 3 minutes and 49 seconds control time. Joshua Van had 50, and they do count some of that up against the cage. So, I mean, really, with 21 takedowns attempted, he got four of them, they say. I mean, really, he only got control with, I'd say, like two of them. Maybe got four takedowns, but really only got control of Van twice. And he just couldn't keep him down, and Van was just way farther ahead on the feet. I mean, he outstruck him by almost 80 strikes. He was just peppering him on the feet. And towards the end of the third, he really started to catch a beat on him. He hurt Ray to the body, and Ray said it was a nut shot. Ref saw it on the screen after 15 seconds, made him start fighting again. Um, Joshua Van is really good. Both these guys are really good. Ray definitely needs to develop some striking to complement his grappling to be able to close that distance and use his grappling. But Joshua Van is really good. He's looked great his last two fights, and I'm super excited to see what he does next. He's super young. He's got a super bright future ahead of him. And that was it for the prelims. And then on to the main card. This was a great card overall. And the main card was started off with fireworks. King Green versus Rufy. Just an insane kick by Rufy. King Green keeps his hands down and spinning kick to the head, and Bobby just couldn't get his hands up. Tried ducking out without coming up to block the kick, and just right off the temple, and that was it. Face planted onto the ground. He was out cold, and he was out bad too. The fighting nerds are taking over the UFC. I mean, Prates, Silva, Bahalio, and Rufy are like a combined 18-0 in the UFC, which is pretty absurd. All different weight classes too, from 45, 55, 70 to 85. They have potential top five contenders, potential belt holders, because Kyo's already top five. Prates is right on the edge of that. Ruffy's going to be in the rankings now. Silva's going to be close to the rankings, if not in the rankings, if he beats Mitchell. So, I mean, they're really good. They've taken the fight world by storm, and their team's super sick. They're all super fun to watch. They all have really different styles, but that was just a disgusting knockout by Rufy. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. I'm sure if you're watching this, you've seen it, but man, that was sick. I'm curious to see where they go with him next. He said Dariush for a main event. I think that'd be pretty cool. Um, if he gets onto the edge of the rankings for this, that makes sense, honestly. Even if he's right outside the rankings, that makes sense, just because coming off of a win like that. Give him a main event, see how he lasts. If he goes 5 rounds with someone like Dariush, who's got pretty good grappling, can go 5 rounds. And we saw Rufy kind of gas a little bit with Lawn Top his last fight. So I think that's a really good step up for Rufy. I think it's not too big of a jump. It's not even the best stylistic matchup for him. I mean, Dariush doesn't have great striking, but he also does have really good grappling. So I think that's a perfect fight to make. I think that was a great call out. Amazing performance. He did get 50K for it, obviously. Dana probably slid him a little bit more than that, even because that was a viral knockout and that was pretty sick. Then on to the next one, we had Lemos versus Lucindo, and this kind of went how I thought it was going to. I just thought Lemos was just kind of that step above in the women's division, like coming off 2 fights ago fighting Wei Lee, and then Lucindo fighting her, coming off of a split decision win to someone like Marina Rodriguez. I felt like it was a needed step up, but I thought it was still too big of a step up for her. She's pretty young. And Lemos looked pretty good. She went out there 2 rounds to one. I think it was a good decision. I don't think there's anything funky here. That's really all I have to say about that fight. It kind of went how I thought it was going to. I didn't think Lucindo was quite ready for that step up in competition. But then the next fight, Jalen Turner and Ignacio. This fight went nothing how I thought it was going to. Ignacio did say throughout the week that he was going to sub Jalen, but really I thought they were going to go out there and it was going to be kind of a fun firefight on the feet between 263 lightweights. But Ignacio went out there, shot for a takedown, ended up on his back, and ended up in a triangle pretty quickly. Jalen landed a couple good strikes. Um, when he got on top, he landed a couple good strikes. He did defend the takedown. And then Ignacio off of his back, super long, got his legs wrapped up, and he was about to put Jalen to sleep, and Jalen tapped. Jalen did say he retired after the fight. I don't know if he's going to actually retire or not, but if he did, I mean, congrats to him on his career. He gave us some fun fights, but I kind of hope he doesn't retire. I think he's still got a lot left in the tank. I mean, he's got two losses in a row now, but really that Moicano fight he really could have won if he didn't walk off. So yeah, we'll see what happens after this. Ignacio is going to be in the rankings. There's going to be some really fun fights ahead for him. He's going to be a problem in the lightweight division, especially showing some grappling like that. And then along paired with his striking and his length, he's going to be a problem. So yeah, super good win for Ignacio. The lightweight division is just so interesting. But on to the co-main, Gaethje versus Fiziev. These guys fighting like it was fireworks again. They're so sweet to watch fight. It was just as good as their first fight in my opinion. Uh, Came out first round. Fiziev got two early takedowns actually on Gaethje, which I wouldn't have predicted to happen. I don't think anyone did. I thought it was going to be just a complete firefight on the feet, but goes out there, um, gets two takedowns, wins the first round. Even Gaethje said himself in the post-fight presser that he was a little bit worried after that, but I don't know why, because he kind of just abandoned that game plan after that and then went back to just how the first fight went, kind of got into a firefight with Gaethje and let Gaethje build himself into the fight. And Gaethje landed that big uppercut and just, yeah, worked himself back into the fight. He looked great again. Um, I was definitely a little worried about Gaethje's chin. It was there again. He just never fails to put on just banger performances. There was another awesome, just classic Justin Gaethje fight. Only the third time he's ever gotten a decision, and two of them were against Rafael Fiziev. So, like, good on Rafael Fiziev. Like, Gaethje's going out there to get a finish, so is Fiziev, but they always just put on firework performances. They've had two awesome 3-round fights. So, super fun co-main event. And then on to the main event. Honestly, not the most fun fight. 49-46, 48-47, and 48-47 for Magomed. Um, Honestly, Poatan just couldn't get going on the feet. I think he was just too worried about the takedowns, which he did an amazing job defending. He was 12 for 12 on takedown defense. Magomed was 0 for 12 on his takedowns. And Poatan looked really good defending takedowns, but he didn't really do much other than chop at that lead leg, and he was on his back foot the whole fight, which we don't see too often. Normally, he's the one stalking, pressuring. And Magomed was just doing a really good job at when Alex was chopping at the leg. He wasn't giving him like big reactions like people do. He wasn't really addressing the leg kicks at all. Really, he was just kind of eating them. Alex threw 55 leg kicks, landed 48 of them, and Magomed really wasn't addressing him. But like I said, he wasn't overreacting either, which is what Poatan typically gets when he starts chopping at the legs. They start switching stances. Magomed stayed same stance like the entire fight, and just kept Poatan on the back foot, was pressuring him and holding him up against the cage, just kind of tiring him out up against the cage. Really wasn't a super fun fight. Um, but towards the end there in the fifth, you could see Poatan kind of starting to catch a beat on Magomed. So I'll be curious to see how the second fight looks. Dana said they probably will do an immediate rematch. I think with the star power that Alex has, you have to do an immediate rematch. Um, Especially with the top of the division where it is in the lightweight division or light heavyweight division, I apologize. With Jamal Hill, coming off of losses or coming off of a loss to Yuri recently. Yuri losing to Alex twice, but Yuri also beating Rakic. And then Magomed's already beat Rakic, so you could maybe give it to Yuri. But like I said, Alex has already beat Yuri twice. And so I feel like it just doesn't make any sense to do anything other than Alex just because of his star power and where the top of the division is right now for the light heavyweights. So I'm curious to see how that second fight will go. There's honestly a pretty good chance that it looks the exact same. Um, or maybe now Poatan knows that he can defend his takedowns a little bit better and he can open up a little bit more on the feet because Magomed isn't going to present that huge, like, he does present a takedown threat, obviously, but Poatan was able to defend it. Um, and maybe work a little bit more on cage work. So we'll see. It's a tough stylistic matchup for Poatan. I think that's why the UFC kind of kept it away from Poatan for a bit, let him get a couple title defenses, and why Poatan tried to. I wouldn't say he necessarily tried to avoid Magomed, because I don't think he really is going to avoid anyone. He'll fight anyone, but maybe tried to extend his time a little bit to get a little bit better at grappling because he does know where the holes in his game are. Um, but yeah, great performance by Magomed. Another chin strap beard in the UFC with a title. Good on him. It was a great performance. I mean, that was literally the picture perfect performance for him. That was what he needed to do. He needed to go out there and make it a boring fight, not make it a firefight, just pressure Poatan, keep him up against the cage, lands just straight 1-2s down the pipe, not overcommit on anything, not open himself up. So good on Magomed. Um, and yeah, and new. So that was it for UFC 313. Even with the two fights canceled, the Gutierrez and the Blades fight getting canceled, um, it was a really fun card, top to bottom. Not the most fun main event, but you can't always get everything that you want. It was a super fun card overall. I think that the one fight of the early prelims was a great opener to the night. The prelims definitely delivered, and the main card delivered, no doubt. I mean, you had a Gaethje fight on the main card. That's enough. And then you had a sweet spinning back kick knockout. Ignacio looked really good. So overall, pretty good card. I wouldn't say like top five card of the year it'll end up being, but it was a really good card. Some really fun fights, crazy knockouts. So yeah, that's it for UFC 313. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll be back later this week with another breakdown of the next card coming up.
Mic check. Checking if the AirPod works.